So, continuing my search for inspiration for my thriller film, I looked towards an actual film this time rather than a trailer. I looked towards a film where I felt that I could maybe get some more inspiration for the characters, maybe setting, maybe location, and the story. Not so much the storyline, but the mise en scène. Because X Men, though gave me lots of inspiration, kind of missed out on these few chunks. So I've in continuous search for inspiration for each convention and aspect of a thriller film, I'm going to be talking about an actual film in this one. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 2016 release film called The Nice Guys, directed by Shane Black and starring Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. The film is about a mismatched pair of private-eyed investigators about the apparent suicide of a porn star in the 1970s Los Angeles. I'm going to be discussing the conventions of the film and talk in depth about what has inspired me and what hasn't, and explain why as I get closer to bringing my thriller film together. The film is an action crime comedy, but I was inspired by many different aspects which could be incorporated into my thriller film. So what I'm trying to explain is, though it's lots of different genres into one, I've taken aspects kind of from each of these genres in some way, and kind of, though they're from that genre, they can be incorporated into a thriller, because thriller and crime are very, very similar, and action and thriller can be very similar too. So without further ado, I'll first off talking about the conventions, and towards the end I will talk about my overall opinion of the film, much like I did in the X-Men Apocalypse video, and explain what inspiration I've taken from The Nice Guys. Okay, so the camera shots that I felt inspired by. The camera shots used in the film were good and suited to the situation, building to the intensity and suspense of the film. However, I am going to be brutally honest here, and because the film is a release fairly recently, I watched the film a few months ago, and I cannot remember all the camera shots that well, which could be it could be a sign that they didn't really inspire me that much, because I cannot remember them. But other aspects I do remember, which would be a sign that they had more impact than me, and as a result has inspired me. So the reason I kind of chose to talk about this film is more because the storyline and the characters, though we'll get into more depth later, did inspire me quite a bit, and they have stuck in my mind, and each aspect of them always keep coming back to me for my thriller film. So it was kind of one of the Nice Guys was a film I really wanted to talk about, but I wanted to talk about the whole film, because I don't want to talk about the trailer and how that portrays the characters. I want to talk about the film so I can talk about the characters' development and how this kind of impacted the film and why I got inspired by them. And I feel like you can't really get the same intake from the trailer for the characters, because you don't really know that much about them in order to be talking about their development and their characteristics. So therefore I'm not going to be too heavy on the camera shots, but the characters I am very looking forward to. But anyway, there was a shot, however, that did inspire me, which was an establishing shot over Los Angeles, which was not only great, because it's a great city, but it was an establishing shot set in the 1970s LA. So it kind of really did set the scene, though LA hasn't changed drastically since the 1970s. You can kind of see the way it's all panned out, and the lights and the cars, you can see that it's the 1970s. So it's a great way to kind of get the feel and the mood of when the film is set. And it's also a beautiful shot which captures the audience attention, making them intrigued early on in the film. But however, though I was inspired by this, I don't really have the tools or a decent location where I can get an establishing shot. So unfortunately, I will not be able to take this further through my thriller film, although it was a great shot. Now, if I can somehow find a way once I have more ideas and the thriller film starts coming together on how maybe I could have an establishing shot, because I haven't decided on the location, the characters, it's all still in development at this point, because obviously we're early on in the research and planning. However, I do feel that if I can find the appropriate place where it will not look in some ways non-professional, and I can get it so it does look like it's a part of the film, I will use an establishing shot. But I cannot get over the way that these can be so well used to set a movie up. So this is a perfect example, because obviously it's set in the 1970s. It sets up the 1970s Los Angeles so perfectly that I feel that in some way, even if it's not quite the establishing shot, I've been inspired to kind of have at least a couple of shots which set up the scene and the mood and the setting of my film. And the setting, I don't mean by location, I mean the setting as in what year I'm doing. If I'm doing it in 2016, 1950s, anyway, I need to make sure that it's clear about when the movie is set in the trailer. So next, I want to be talking about the storyline of The Nice Guys, which I felt quite a bit inspired by, because it's such a unique story in my opinion. Not so much the fact that the if you get right down to basics, the storyline may not be as original as some other films. However, I do feel that what the spin that it has on this kind of plot does make it unique in its own way, which is, I think, is why I've been inspired so much by it. So the storyline of The Nice Guys is one of the biggest inspirations for me. As I said, the storyline follows a mismatched pair of private eye investigators about the apparent suicide of a porn star in 1970s Los Angeles. So already, I feel that just from that sentence, you can kind of see the different take that this film has on the movie genre. Yes, it's a crime comedy action. The way you have the porn star in there kind of boosts up the rating to maybe not even in some ways, because it's a crime with porn in it, you may not exactly feel that it's a thriller film. It may seem a little bit, but that's what I mean. It really does take a different spin on things. I very much like the idea of the private investigators and the jobs that they get set, whether it be a very strange one or one which could be deadly and result in a lot of people getting hurt. So the reason I put strange one is because in the film, it sounds strange at the start, but this grandma wants to find out where her granddaughter is, and she doesn't think she's been died. She thinks she's been kidnapped, and she said she dies, but then she thinks she saw her. And to Ryan Gosling, even though we find out later in the film that this all links into the plot, but to Ryan Gosling, that kind of sounds insane. So what the concept I have is to maybe show the life of the investigator through silly stuff like that, and maybe they are making it up and it was mistaken for a teddy or something so silly, but also something that's very serious and can get a lot of people hurt. So I like the concept of them having to blend in with normal people and working for themselves. The fact that what they do is not good, but it's almost like they are and it's almost like they're the antagonists because of their bad ways. But because they are the main characters and they're doing it for their own moral reasons, even if this is to gather money, it makes them the protagonists as default in a way. They're in no shape or form good people, but the people they're up against is even worse. So that kind of gives a nice contrast. Yes, they're the protagonists, but are they heroes? No, they're not. So that's what I really like about this film. It's not a typical hero versus villain. It's kind of villain against worse villain, and that's what I really like about it. So this has inspired me massively to create a story based around the life of a private investigator and the struggles he has to go through, and how the private work can lead to the protagonist being in a lot of trouble. I'm strongly for making my film about a private investigator, and I was very much a fan of the beginning of the movie and the jobs he was put out to do, which I thought was one of the best parts of the movie, when you saw the different jobs rather than their overall porn star investigation, just the little job he got given. When an example would be there's this little girl who's getting followed. That's much similar. That's kind of the jobs they get set. People getting followed there to go and sort them out. It's not always that way. And it was basically, he goes to the house, Russell Crowe's character says stop following the girl and punches him in the face. Something as simple as that. And it is very comical at times as well, but also quite serious. And that's what I mean by following that kind of life rather than having one big story. So I wish to expand on this section of the film and show the everyday life of a private investigator and showing how different jobs can kind of change of his mood and his development as a person, whether the job be silly or dangerous. They will also make the trailer compelling, as it will have lots of different things to see, and it will also be developing my main character even through the trailer, which many films don't actually do these days. They give you 2D one-dimensional characters that no one really cares about, so they're not really compelled to go and see the film, and I do not want to fall into that trap. I want to make sure that my character, even in the trailer, is intriguing, he's different, he may not be a good guy, but he's doing it for the right reasons, and I'm feel very strongly about this. However, I'm not in any way inspired by the part of the storyline about the investigation of a porn star. Though in some ways this made the movie funny, and it was very interesting to follow and see how they got to the conclusion. And it's a difference from comedies as it's a crime drama. It might make the thriller film R-rated because porn stars are going to be naked and there's going to be naked women. And then I want to keep to a fairly low target audience. Maybe not too low where little kids are come to see it, but I don't want it to be so high that you have to be maybe even older than what I am to go and see this film and make it an 18. I don't want to fall into that trap. And it does mean that not many people will be able to see it. I'm not 100% sure what the certificates for the film, my film, will be, but I do not want it to be an 18, and that is what I'm sure about. And I do not want to show any nudity in it, and I'm also trying to stay away from I'm trying to stay away from the section of this storyline. However, despite the whole porn star fiasco, I do feel very strongly about the private investigator part, which is probably why I'm so excited to talk about the characters and how they developed in this film and how they have just inspired me. So without further ado, I am now going to be talking about the characters in the film The Nice Guys. So the characters in The Nice Guys are one of some of my favourite characters that I've seen in a movie recently. Maybe not because of them as a character, but just their development in it. And how, I keep saying this, but how they're not good guys, but they're also not as bad as the villains they're facing. So the characters in this film are both private investigators that have different styles, but are both very good at their job. They are a mixed match pair and class a bit throughout the film, this is where most of the comedies come from because they clash quite a bit, is what I meant to say. However, I'm not looking for any comedy aspects in my thriller film, other than a few comedic lines to break up the tension in the scene, which I went into further detail in my previous video. I was inspired by Russell Crowe's character called Jackson Healy. He's the one who inspired me the most, if I'm completely honest. He is the more serious and in some ways grumpy of the two characters. But the reason he's inspired me is because he's hardcore and shows that he is a bad person, but he can do some good. And I feel like a bad person doing good is a great way to show character development through a film. And also the main point of developing a character is so that the audience gather a connection with this character. It's not just because you want to have a good film with a developed character. It's so the audience can feel more attached to it, and therefore you're creating a better character because the audience can relate to it. He goes on with his everyday life and takes it for what it is. Though this may sound boring, that he has not really any motivation or purpose with his life. This is all the room he needs for his character development, and this is a way of building his character. His badass way and ruthless aggression makes him a perfect protagonist to keep the audience entertained and makes him slightly different from all the rest because of his salty and bad attitude. He's kind of not this protagonist where he's all good, he's good from the start, and he came from the heavens to fight the bad guys and save the world. Jackson Healy isn't that guy. He's a guy who's just trying to get money, like an everyday guy. He's running low on money. He lives in a flat above a restaurant, and he's not really getting that much income. So he charges quite a bit for what he does, and what he does is bad. And that's why he gets investigated to do something and take out some guys that are even worse than he does. Therefore, I've taken massive inspiration from him to use in my thriller film, as I think this character has a lot to work with and is perfectly fit with the storyline I have planned. However, I was not inspired by the other character, Ryan Gosling's character, as he was a bit more of a wimp, and he was the main source of the comedy in the film, which is what I'm trying to avoid, because it's a very hard genre to get right. So, though Ryan Gosling's character was very funny in the film and did go along with Russell Crowe's character very well, and they bounced off each other, the bouncing off each other was kind of where the comedy came from. The crime was from the storyline, the action was from the characters, the connection between the characters was the comedy, is what I'm trying to say. And because I'm not bothered about the comedy, and I don't plan to have dual protagonists, I didn't really care about this character. And for my personal idea that I've got going around the private investigator storyline, I feel like a more badass, grumpy kind of guy will be the person that I want to have in my thriller film, because I feel I have someone in mind to play this role. You want him to be big, you want him to be chunky, but you need to have that salty attitude. The attitude where he doesn't really care, he just wants the money, go home and spend it on alcohol or cigarettes. The way he goes about things, he doesn't stress. And an example of this is in the film, he leaves his house without his knuckle duster. He gets to the guy's house where he's supposed to be teaching him a lesson. He realises it. He has a little bit like, and then he just continues and just knocks him out of his bare hands. It's that kind of not caring about stuff like that and just getting on with stuff proves how much of a badass he is. And I keep saying the word badass because there's no better way to describe his character. You can say detailed, you can say hardcore, but at the core, he's just a badass. He doesn't care what other people think. He gets on with it, and that's the type of character I want to have in my thriller film. And I feel that because he's this grumpy guy, the development he gets throughout the film, whether it be through meeting a girl, saving a young child, meeting a partner, there's so many ways you can develop his character and slowly make him seem maybe not this grumpy guy he was, or better yet, you could have him become a worse guy. He becomes this guy which he doesn't want to be, and he starts off happy and then he gets bad because he has to defeat a guy which is worse than him. There are so many different variations you can take with this character and the storyline I have going, which is why I'm very excited and got very inspired by Jackson Healy from this film. And though I did not take any inspiration from Ryan Gosling's character, without him, Jackson Healy, Russell Crowe's character, would have not have been what he was. And that's why I need to be careful and not copy him too much, because my character will not have the other character to bounce off of. It would just be him, the protagonist, and doing against his private investigating work. So the next thing I want to talk about is the music, and slightly more unlike the X-Men Apocalypse trailer, I was not very inspired by the music here, but I still wanted to talk about it just so I've covered the convention in this film. However, this will not be a very long segment about the music. And obviously music is not one of my strong points anyway, so I feel like in some way that benefits me, because I only pick out inspired by music that really gets me, and it doesn't have to be too particular. I can have a very wide range of listen to the music and it all sounds similar, which will be much better for me to try and create and put into my thriller film. So the music in actual film I can't actually remember, which is another reason why I don't think I was inspired by it. The music from the trailer is what I resorted to because I couldn't remember it from the film. And it's time-based getting the entire classic hits from the 1970s, which personally is a time of music which I enjoyed, such as Earth, Wind and Fire, Bumpuri, and the Jackson 5 are my favourites from that era. But I did not take any inspiration from it because obviously we're not allowed to use copyright music in our thriller film and for the trailer. And a lot of films do use songs that are actually already published. But because we can't do that, I'm gonna have to find music which I feel inspires me in a way that it's not someone else's work that I'm trying to copy. It's a series of beats maybe from a trailer which they created themselves, which I can then create a variation of them and create my own beats. So overall, the music did not inspire me. However, I was inspired by the X-Men, and I do strive to find some music that inspires me for my thriller film trailer. Setting and location is another thing which I wasn't very inspired by, so I'm not going to ramble on about this too long. The reason being is the setting of the film is visually beautiful. Now, I did really enjoy the location, and it is a great movie location to film movies. It has the beauty, and everybody knows about LA and Hollywood, and it is where a lot of these films are made. And I'm a guy who likes his cities, so if I see a city in a film, it does kind of hit a spot in me which kind of makes me like that film, because I would like to go there myself, whether it be set in LA or New York or Miami. And I have been to LA before, and it is when you walk around there, there's so many things there, and the location is just so perfect for the type of film that I want to make. It is quite a shame that I can't go there and film it there. However, because the location is very good and very far out of my way, there is no possible way I'll be able to go and film here. Even though it would have been a perfect location for my movie, it's just not possible. So even if I had taken any inspiration from it, I would not have the chance to put it to good use. However, I could use another kind of big-ish town to go there. So I'm thinking of maybe a town. My town's a little bit small where I live, but that does not mean I can't go a little bit out of my way to try and find a bit of a bigger town. And the best thing about setting and locations about movies is that you can have a bar in a small little village, and yet you can have him walking out of another bar, because if you just use the inside of that bar, no one's going to see what's outside. So as long as you're kind of a little bit clever with your camera shots, you can have say a bar in London, and he can come out into the town in Birmingham. So what I'm trying to say is that if you use your camera shots right and don't shoot any of the outside within the pub, or at least not out the front, when he walks out the front on that side, if you don't show outside, it can look like he's coming out of a pub that was always there. Anyway, I'm going to move straight on to the mise-en-scène, which I did gather some info. I got a little bit of inspiration from, but not much. So the mise-en-scène, I did not gather much inspiration from this aspect for the same reason I discussed in the settings part of this video. However, guns. Where we used in this film, in most of the film. Now, I try to avoid talking about guns because I feel like I repeat myself every video how I'm inspired by guns. And it's kind of getting to that point where everyone's going to probably use guns at this point. If you're doing a thriller film, a gun's going to be shown. And I've explained so many times why guns are good for what I'm doing. But I will go into a little bit of detail about it just for grade's sake. However, guns were used in this film in a lot of it. However, the reason they inspired me from this film is because they are far not overused. So this is why I'm inspired in some way by this film, because yes, they use guns, and I'm kind of talking about the way that they use rather than the props themselves. But that's what inspired me about the mise-en-scène in this, so that's what I'm going to talk about. There is gunfights as such, but they are not too often, meaning when a gun is pulled out in the film, you genuinely feel worried that someone may actually die. Unlike other films where guns are used so much that it's just you get used to it. You maybe not even feel fear because they get it out just for the sake of having a gun. I don't want to do that. I want to only use it when I need to. Another prop which is used in this film, which is not often seen, were brass knuckles. These inspired me as they fit perfectly with the thriller film plot that I'm trying to tackle and the character I want to use. And the change up from gunfights to fist fights, which I want to try and incorporate at least somewhere in my thriller film. And therefore, the mise-en-scène has inspired me because of their easy-to-use props, or their easy-ish props, and because they will both fit very nicely with my storyline I have been developing, and the weapon is a bit different, the brass knuckles. And though maybe sometimes I just feel like a brass knuckles, if I could get some, would be a nice addition for something different rather than just a gun. And also you're going to use the old props such as beer glasses and stuff like that. And I wasn't really inspired by the costume of this film. Yes, I did like Russell Crowe's leather jacket that he used. I should say Jackson Healy, really, because that was the character. And yes, that would go well with my character. However, I want him to take more of a smart approach, and I don't mean the smart approach of that Ryan Gosling character used when he had the flower top and the blue blazer. I want a proper smart. Now, though this is not decided yet, I'm waiting for something to struck me and inspire me. This is just something that I wanted to mention because I haven't talked about costume yet, and the reason being is because I haven't found something that has inspired me enough that I really want to use it. However, overall, the mise-en-scène was pretty good in this film. The brass knuckles have inspired me to kind of make more fist fights rather than gun fights, because I feel they're different and we don't see enough fist fights nowadays, or at least ones that are not that well choreographed. So even if it's just one punch with a nice sound effect in it, that is going to draw people into the action side of this film, and then they also want to be incorporated with the storyline of this film. I feel I have a nice blend of gun action, brass knuckles, and then the storyline. I can create a thriller film trailer which I feel people will generally want to come and see, and if they like the trailer, they'll all like to go and see the film, and that's what it's all about in the end. That's what all my filming is about, making money, and I feel this trailer, if I can get the right balance, will be able to do that. So much like I did in the X-Men video, I just want to wrap this up by having an overall opinion on the film personally, to kind of wrap the video up and show why I got inspired by this film, because I was very much pleased with this film, and I do genuinely think it was one of the best films of 2016 so far, and I do think really it's up in the top 3 favourite films this year. I have much enjoyed this film, and I think it's one of the highlight movies in 2016. It was also a very beneficial movie for me, because I have taken massive inspiration for my protagonist and storyline from in this film to use in my thriller film trailer. So it's very much worth a watch for me, just for this aspect. I also feel that the actor and approach to the film, the acting and the approach to the film, has inspired me itself to show me with a great skilled actor and those who are committed to the role can make a great film even better. This means I will work hard to find someone that will help me put on the best dedication into my protagonist character, and I can work side by side with them so that I can kind of create this protagonist that I have the vision of. And I feel that if they are with me enough to create this protagonist and put 100% effort in, it will make this trailer crisp. The film itself is very well directed and acted, and it is a must-see for all movie fans for its different approach to detective films and its great script. And the script in this film was on point, which I haven't spoke about, but overall, quickly, the script was very good, and the script inspired me itself in a way to kind of make my lines in the trailer a little bit more meaningful. And also I spoke about the comedic lines, but the lines itself need to be meaningful and not just lines where they're throwaway for the action. I generally want to think about the script and not just make up the lines on the spot like I did for my opening 2 minutes of a thriller film. I plan to do a script for my characters and my actors to make the film even better, and that was the inspiration I took from the film The Nice Guys.